And a TGIF, everyone. Welcome into the First Call podcast presented by ExpressBet and First Bet. He's Scott Shapiro. I'm Jeremy Plonk. We're going to handicap some races this weekend. You know, for PA and Jersey boys, it's kind of a good weekend for us. We got to admit here. I mean, we've got big racing at Delaware Park. We've got Monmouth. The Mid-Atlantic is in the spotlight. We're just past the Belmont Stakes. Scott, this is my first time on a podcast with you since the Belmont Stakes. Quick reaction to what we saw at Saratoga, a replay of the Kentucky Derby, but maybe even more impressive from Sovereignty.
Yeah, you and I, you first, me second, real quick after. But journalism, we thought was the best of this crop. And for the first time in a while, I know I was right. This is a really good colt, but Sovereignty, I mean, this is a serious horse.
Yeah.
You know, we like to look at the late pace ratings from Brisnet, 117 and 107. So anything that looked like journalism was, getting tired is false. He just ran into the best, the way I see it is the only 3-year-old since Justify, he's a wild card that I can even put in both of their categories would be Epicenter, and it's pretty difficult because he didn't win any of the Triple Crown races. So I was completely, I didn't want him to win. I don't want him to win, his next race, but he's awesome.
He is absolutely that. Final quarter mile of the Belmont Stakes, faster than Arrowgate's track record final quarter mile when he won the Travers back in 2016 in that blistering 159 race. So he came home like no horse we've seen really wrapping up a Triple Crown race, and that was phenomenal from Sovereignty. Journalism, Sovereignty, maybe they match up again somewhere down the road. We'll have to see what the connections want to do there. You've got to figure Sovereignty stays in New York with the Travers. As for journalism and Baeza, third place finisher in the Derby and the Belmont Stakes, they could stay west. If they want to just stay west the rest of the year, they obviously could. You've got the Pacific Classic, you got the Awesome Again Stakes at Santa Anita in the fall, and the Breeders' Cup Classic at Del Mar. If they want to split up and run one prep each into the Breeders' Cup, we might see a rematch in the Breeders' Cup Classic at Del Mar, but we may not see all these 3-year-olds together until then, or they could all get sporty and go after the Travers, and we could have a great one in the Midsummer Derby. We'll talk about that as the summer rolls along, but right now we've got not the big weekend at Monmouth or Delaware, but these are the prep weekends towards the big weekends coming up later in the year. Haskell Preview Day, first up at Monmouth Park, and at Delaware Park, they're going to run some prep races towards the Delaware Handicap. Of course, the Delaware Handicap used to be a big summer showcase at Del Park, but that race from July in years past has been moved this year to October. So this is a bit more of a standalone card than just a prep day towards the Del Cap, and the Obia Stakes is that local prep race for the fillies and mares. For the Delaware Handicap, we'll have the Cape Henlopen. First running of the Delaware Derby. They've had some 3-year-old races under other names in years past at Delaware, but first time going in on the Derby moniker. And then the traditional Delaware Oaks feature race on Saturday at Del Park. To Monmouth we go on preview day for Haskell. Multiple stakes races on the card. We will handicap 2 of those. The Pegasus, the local prep race towards the Haskell Invitational, and then the Salvatore Mile, which will get horses ready for the Iselin on the undercard race on Haskell Day. The Churchill Downs, the Chorleywood will put distance runners in the spotlight on the grass, and then the Turf Sprinters will go first lap over at Santa Anita in the Daytona, our final stakes race to handicap this weekend. A couple promotions to remind you of at Monmouth and Delaware Park. When you bet with First Bet and Express Bet this weekend, you get 10 times Express Bet and First Rewards points on Saturday at Monmouth Park on all wagers that you make on that card. Again, 10 times rewards points. They can be redeemed for wagering credits, handicapping products, swag, all kinds of good things. So rack up those First Rewards points, take advantage. And at Delaware Park, we've got a $5,000 late pick 4 hit and split on Saturday. Take down the Del Park late pick 4 and not only get your pari-mutuel winnings, but you add your share of $5,000 with other players who hit it just on the platforms of First Bet and Express Bet. Good weekend here and a good weekend again for a couple Mid-Atlantic dudes. So we're looking forward to this. As for the weather, it's supposed to be rainy in Churchill Downs today and tomorrow. So for that Chorleywood Stakes, maybe we're looking at some soft turf conditions there. Some morning rain forecasted both at Monmouth and Delaware on Saturday, supposed to clear out later in the day. I think we'll be okay. There could be a little bit of give in the turf course at both of those places, but that being the forecast, let's get set to handicap, Scott. Let's go to the Obia first up here. Delaware Park, race number 6. 150 grander. There'll be a name for the 1969 and 1970 Delaware Handicap winner. Again, this race a prep for the Delaware Handicap, but that race won't be run until September this year. Has been traditionally a July prep race. So let's talk about the field in here. You got Mott, you got Pletcher, you got some big names, but there's also some horses from the Mid-Atlantic that are pretty good in here too. Foxy Jr., Malibu Beauty, they rematch, and there are two horses in here that, against some of the big names, might be value plays.
I think so, and I think this race, the pace is going to be honest. You've got quite a bit of speed, both in the inside and outside. Malibu Beauty on the outside, into Amore, done enough. Gunsong, if she comes to this race, unclear yet if she's going to run, to me, in Monmouth or Delaware Park. She's cross-entered. One thing to note, Todd Pletcher, 0 for 8 over the last 5 years when shipping in the Delaware Park. So maybe something to consider, maybe not. But to me, the honest pace is going to set things up well for a PA bred here in a non-PA race, even though there's a couple of Pennsylvania bred stakes at Parks on Sunday. But Foxy Jr. Took on Open Company last time at Parks, just a 6.5 furlong race, but that was off the layoff. And I think that was a good prep for this spot. Should get a really good trip out there, and is 9 for 20 in her career. So we know she has a nose for the wire.
She's been head-to-head with Malibu Beauty in the past. That was in the 38 Go-Go over the winter at Laurel Park. In fact, back in November. So let's take a look back at that race. Foxy Jr. in winning form.
Now, and Malibu Beauty set down by Toledo, right-handed pressure. Foxy Jr. comes to even turn. Here's Foxy Jr., who's grabbed a narrow lead with 1 furlong left to go. Foxy Jr. from Malibu Beauty, then Foggy Night. Picking up on the inside is Kissed by an Angel for a third, trying to move into third position there with a 16th to go. It's Foxy Jr. Oh, she's sharp as can be in the 38 Go-Go. Foxy Jr.
One of the others that might take some money and help your price on Foxy Jr. Sidamara down on the rail, Junior Alvarado, Bill Mott. They had a pretty good weekend last week at Saratoga. They team up with a filly who just missed by a nose in Delaware Oaks last year, but she hasn't been seen since the Cotillion Stakes in September at Park. So long layoff for her, Sidamara on the comeback trail. Again, you got Mott, you got Pletcher, you got Irad, you got Johnny V. You got some big names in the program here. You should be able to hold down a price on Foxy Jr. if you're right in here. She's won 6 of her last 8. She knows the way to the winner's circle. She's Scott's top pick in the Obia Stakes. Let's go to the 7th race on the card. It's the Cape Henlopen, 1.5 miles on the turf here. Cape Henlopen up near Rehoboth Beach, part of the Hook on Delaware, out into the ocean there. So a little geographical race name in this spot. A little fun fact, Cape Henlopen used to be part of Pennsylvania and was ceded back to the U.S. government when Delaware was formed. So maybe we've got some Pennsylvania connections to go here. Scott, let's go through the Cape Henlopen. 1.5 miles in here. K Army is an interesting Mott and Alvarado. We talked about them with the Sidamara in the previous race, but K Army will be one of the favorites in here, if not the favorite, coming off a third in the Fort Marcy. This is a Group 1 winner from down in Chile, who the U.S. debut wasn't too bad when you consider third to Deterministic, chasing that front runner all the way throughout. Since then, Deterministic's come back and won the big stakes race, the Manhattan on Sunday, the Grade 1 in New York. So K Army certainly going to be tough in here with a good post draw out of post 3. Do you like that one, or do you like somebody else?
I think that horse has a huge chance in here, but I wanted to give a quick shout out to the beaches of Delaware. I don't think people think about Rehoboth and Dewey Beach as, good spots, but actually my aunt and my aunt's new husband live there. Had a lot of good times there, so just wanted to throw that out. It'll probably be the only time I get to in horse racing history. I think that K Army is going to be tough to beat in here, but the likely price won't be that great. You mentioned chasing the speed of Deterministic. Clearly a horse that they thought a little bit of to move into a Grade 2 right off the bench. But that said, this horse was running in Grade 1s in Chile and came to the States 10 for 10. So I don't know if that spotting in this one is necessarily showing that it's a horse that Mott and team have a lot of bullish goals for, if you will, but certainly the one to beat in here. I'm going to take a big swing, though, JP. Number 1, Vote No, a 4-year-old gelding. I know this horse well, and Billy Morey is his trainer. He was a really good turf sprinter, all-weather sprinter early on. So it took me a little while to warm up to him. But when you watch the replay of the Horseshoe Indianapolis race, which May 19th, if you get a chance to go back and watch that one, This horse ran down Lone Speed and finished extremely well for what I expected of a horse that I considered a sprinter. I think he's got it in him to go to get more distance, and he gets the right guy aboard in Paco Lopez. So I'm going to take a swing with a big morning line price and number 1, vote no.
I got another horse in here I think will be a good price to keep an eye on, too. Cyber Knight. Jack Fisher, really like a jumps trainer in the Mid-Atlantic and some long distance. You know that this horse is going to have the stamina. Second off the layoff, they went a mile and a 16th at Laurel and Allowance Company. Just an old-school prep. Come back and run in an easier race at a shorter trip and now go for the goal. Forrest Boyce, one of the top turf riders in the Mid-Atlantic. She's been for, a decade plus. So I kind of think there's some good Mid-Atlantic turf mile-and-a-half connections there with a horse who's got some classy back form. So I was third in the Nashville Gold Cup down at Kentucky Downs. I'm going to give a shot in here to Cyber Ninja. But I'd be remiss if we didn't go back and take a look at one of the replays in this race. Harrow comes off a win in the Barbados Gold Cup. And your predecessor on this show, Jeff Siegel, he used to love to throw wacky international videos at me. We'd watch races in German and every language on the planet. They're speaking English in Barbados, but I wanted to get at least one Barbadian replay into the show during the history of the podcast. So let's go to the Barbados Gold Cup and Harrow. They're coming at you with the right-hand turn.
And there are no more turns in the Gold Cup. And Harrow has come to the front. On the outside, here is Smoky T. Public sector will not go away. It is Harrow on the inside. On the outside, Smoky T lunging late. It's going to be very tight. It's going to be Harrow wins it.
Harrow, trained by Sappy Joseph Jr. We'll see how that one turns out. Your experience with the Barbados replay, Scott.
That was there's a lot of people there. Horse racing is very alive in Barbados, apparently. That looked like a lot of fun.
Back in March, you talked about the vacationing and the trips to Delaware and the beaches and stuff like that. Many moons ago, we did an entire issue in Horse Player magazine when Tom Quigley and I worked together on that project. We called it 50 Ways to Love Your Summer, and it was all different things to do at racetracks around the country going around. And I agree that Delaware Park and the beautiful paddock and picnic area that they have at the racetrack and the area, it's so quick to get everywhere in Delaware, right? I mean, you can go anywhere in the state really in less than an hour. So Delaware Park would be a great summer trip. Monmouth as well, and that's where we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, the Monmouth racing. But two great summer destinations. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic and you don't want the hustle and the price of Saratoga and the crowds, Delaware, Monmouth, two good trips, I think, that you might want to make as a racing fan. You're going to be pleasantly surprised by both of them. The on-track experience is really quite good. Let's go to Delaware's 8th race on Saturday. It's the first running of the Delaware Derby, and as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, they've run 3-year-old stakes races there over the years. You think back to the Leonard Richards, the Barbaro Stakes, but they've never had the Derby in Delaware, and I think it might be a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses. The Virginia Derby started this year as a dirt race. And I think people look at that and they say, wow, they did good business that weekend. Just the Derby name, Scott. You stick Derby on the end of anything, and it makes for a local prize, and it makes for a local pool. And it's just easy to market the word Derby, even in a loose connection. And the Delaware Derby is going to debut here. We've seen some good horses come through their 3-year-old stakes over the years, but you think like Pollard's Vision, Sun King. There have been some good ones. Stellar Brush won the Leonard Richards back in, I believe, the late 90s, 99, if I'm right on that. This is, a place where some good 3-year-olds can come through. This field here is kind of getting restarted. This isn't a strong group in here for the first Delaware Derby, but we've got a couple in here worth talking about.
We do, and I think from a gambling and handicapping perspective, the way I would attack this race more from, I have a top pick, obviously, we'll talk about in a second, but I think the favorite Admiral Dennis is a little bit vulnerable. I know he's coming out of the best races for a big barn. Both those races, he had every reason, though, to run better in. The Rebel particularly, where there was a really fast pace, and he really didn't make much of an impression. So I think he's a little bit vulnerable. I'm hoping Kentucky Outlaw is close to the price that he I think I saw 6-1 on the morning line. I don't know if we'll get that. I think he's been hammered in all of his starts. We've liked him at times. In the Federico Tessio, I think we both liked him, but he's mental, but he has a ton of ability. And I think it's a bonus here that you get Paco Lopez back in the saddle. He looks like a tough horse to ride, but if you get him right and you get him, I mean, he should, the Long Branch, which you're about to show, it doesn't tell you the whole story. You know, he was off slow. He was goofy throughout the race, and he still was much the best. So Kentucky Outlaw for me to get the jump on Admiral Dennis and the others.
When you think about the multiple stakes races on the card at Monmouth, and that Paco Lopez is going to ride this horse who won the Long Branch and come to Delaware Park for the day. I know Delaware's got multiple stakes as well, but for Paco to give up this particular Saturday at Monmouth, I think it speaks well that he's following along here. Let's go back to Kentucky Outlaw's win at Monmouth in the Long Branch.
And Kentucky Outlaw just breezed to the front. Kentucky Outlaw coming to the top of the lane, the leader, Pascaline, trying to reel him in from the outside. He's second. Cool Intentions third. Dear Chairman Weekends far outside. Lordship in the moment, not picking up the pace. Kentucky Outlaw sprinting for the wire in the final furlong and kicks away to a 3-length edge. Cool Intentions second. Pascaline alongside of him. They're coming to the finish. Kentucky Outlaw holding on. Kentucky Outlaw to win the Long Branch Stakes. A big day.
Pascaline third in there, also back in this race, the Delaware Derby. Several horses in here were cross-entered between the Pegasus at Monmouth and the Delaware Derby. According to Matt Ditterman, the voice you just heard there from Monmouth Park and with some public relations for Monmouth on X recently, he says that Barbadian Runner is going to go to Delaware. So this is a horse from Monmouth who's going to run in this race at Delaware. Probably going to scratch number 4 National Law out of this Delaware Derby. He's going to stay home at Monmouth and run there in the Pegasus instead. And then, of course, the other cross-entered horse, Kentucky Outlaw, Scott's top pick in here, expected to scratch from Monmouth and the Pegasus and run here at Delaware Park in the Delaware Derby. So Kentucky Outlaw, top pick in here for Scott. I'm in the same boat with you in this particular race. I think Surfside Mood's an interesting horse for second, third underneath, the kind who never quite gets there. Mile on the 16th at Delaware. Delaware is not a real speed-heavy kind of racetrack. You know, the horses have to earn it to get over it. So I think a horse who comes with his kind of running style from back can get there, but I just don't think he's going to be brilliant enough to beat Kentucky Outlaw. I give Surfside Moon a good shot as your key underneath, second or third in here. If you're looking to play the tries or supers, I would work Surfside Moon in underneath in the 8th race. Let's go to the 9th, the feature race Saturday at Del Park. It's the Delaware Oaks, grade 3 in here. Some really good ones have run in this race over the years. I mean, it goes all the way back to 1938. And you think names like Gallaret and Gallant Bloom in the old days, but even more recently, you think about horses like Blind Luck, Proud Spell, Jaywalk, Grace Hall. There have been some really, really good fillies, and you say, why is this Delaware Oaks a grade 3? Those names alone tell you why. This has been a good race over the years. We've got a field in here going a mile and a 16th. Overall, a field of 9, and it's a replay of the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes, basically. 1, 2, 3 finishers from the Black-Eyed Susan are in here, but then you add fillies coming out of the 8 Bells and the Kentucky Oaks from Churchill's Derby Day card, or Oaks Day cards. This is a phenomenal rematch, if you will, of some of the more recent races in the division.
I think this came up strong. I mean, Black-Eyed Susan was a grade 2. You could argue that with the depth added from the top 3 finishers, this is a stronger race, and that's, you know, not necessarily a knock on the Black-Eyed Susan. We kind of know what that race is each year. For me, the outsiders are the ones that I like more. You know, I'm not trusting the off-track form of that Black-Eyed Susan all that much. Paris Lily had things her way. Maybe, you know, going to probably unlikely to get caught up in a similar spot, you know, loose on the lead in there. And I thought Margie's Intention was the recipient of the winner of the race, was the recipient of a really good ride from Pratt. I don't necessarily want to assume that anybody can replicate that. No disrespect to Luan Machado. I think Cassier is where the upside and value is in here. This is a filly that's 2 for 3, and maybe when you first look on paper, it'll look like, one-turn horse. Her 2 races were much better, going 6.5 in the 1-turn mile in New York. But the Gulfstream race, that was a race, first off, dominated by a really good filly in 5G. We wish we got to see her in the Kentucky Oaks. But that was 1-2 around the racetrack, that race. No chance for anyone to make up much ground at all. She was the best of the closers. And I thought she finished very well last time. She looks very well meant third off the layoff. And again, should be a relatively good price with kind of lack of 2-turn and graded stakes form.
Right. I picked her in that Gulfstream Oaks off the maiden win. It seemed to me like Shug thought a lot of her to go from that Sprint
Good
maiden
point.
win right into the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Again, like you said, situationally didn't work out well for her in there. Still did best she could to finish third and has come back to win an allowance race since. I would be not surprised at all if she's able to win this. Fondley's a filly who's also 2 for 3 lifetime, and she had success in the Virginia Oaks. Both of her wins have come around 1 turn. She got beat in the Kentucky Oaks, no match in there at 23-1. But Fondley on her best in that race that she ran down in Virginia would be competitive in this spot for Graham Motion and Irad Ortiz riding. Let's go back and check out her win in the Virginia Oaks.
As they round the far turn and head for the quarter pole. Anonyma still the leader as they come for the top of the stretch and is trying to get away. They head for home. Anonyma's in front. Fondley set down for the drive. They're off the turn 1-2. Anonyma still clear. Fondley's been trying to get by the entire race so far, but Anonyma's still in front heading for the final furlong. Fondley's going to try and lift once again. Early on is coming down the center. Down inside Iconomama. Anonyma still in front. Here comes Fondley, who keeps on fighting. Fondley, she's 2 for 2, and she's Oaks bound too.
Again, the Kentucky Oaks didn't work out well for her in 12th, but against this company, this distance, I think she fits better. A Fondley one to keep an eye on. Paris Lily, if there's one to come out of the Black Eyed Susan, that would be my choice in there. I needed her that day. 5-1. She led all the way in the Black Eyed Susan. Nailed at the end at 1 mile and an 8. She shortens up to 1 mile and a 16 based on pedigree by City of Light out of a Stormcat mare. She probably will be better off with that 16th of a mile shorter. And based on her running lines, it probably will help her as well. So if there is one to come out of the Black Eyed Susan, she's the one I want, Paris Lily. But Cassier, horse that both Scott and I think have a big chance in here in the Delaware Oaks. Let's switch now from Delaware, and we're going to go just north about, well, I don't know, you could probably get from Delaware to Monmouth in an hour, hour and a half, not very far, depending on traffic, right? I mean, I-95 traffic, it could be 3 hours, actually, based on traffic patterns. But we're going to look at some races at Monmouth on what is Haskell Preview Day. Multiple stakes on the card, the first of which that we're going to handicap will be the Pegasus. We'll also look at the Express Bet race of the week, the Salvatore Miles. So races 8 and 10, if you're following along in your past performances. Pegasus Stakes first up for us, not to be mistaken with the Pegasus World Cup. The Pegasus Stakes actually has a longer history, goes back to 1980 at the Meadowlands, and this was a really good race at one time. $1 million race, a grade 1 race back in the day. I mean, horses like Barron's, Brian's Time, Crypto Clearance, Danzig Connection, Skip Trial. I mean, if you were a good horse in the mid-Atlantic in this part of the country, the Pegasus was a destination race, this time of year in the summer. So the Pegasus Stakes is the local prep towards the Haskell Invitational coming up later in August. I guess they'll run the Haskell this year, late August. So we've got a chance in here to tune up, or no, late July.
July. I was like,
so
confused. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're like 5 weeks away. They run the Haskell same weekend as the Jim Dandy. We've got a shot in here for these horses to come directly out of this race and on to the Haskell Invitational. Number 1, Kentucky Outlaw. Number 2, Barbadian Runner. Both expected to scratch and run in the race. We just talked about the Delaware Derby. So that's going to pick things up in here with the field that includes Garamond, the horse who has won 2 of 3 lifetime. Last time out, Scott, Garamond was matched up against Cornucopian, who was supposed to be prepping to something really big for Bob Baffert, was supposed to be the bee's knees, but Garamond was able to turn him away. Do you like him or somebody else in this spot?
That race was impressive, perhaps, if you were high on Cornucopian, but in the end, I think Cornucopian's race was left in Arkansas after the Rebel Stakes. So 3-horse field alone on the lead. I don't think he's going to have things as easy, making him a little bit vulnerable, although the scratches of the horses inside him won't hurt his chances. Hopefully, there's some pace in here other than him, so he's not loose on the lead again. I think a horse like Wild and Crazy Night and Bracket Buster as well perhaps will be able to provide that. I hope so, because I think Valentinian is still sitting on a good race. This $1.5 million purchase was very good down at Tampa to win first out. I know some people hold it against some Pletcher runners when they debut at Tampa. I don't. I think there's not a lot of 2-turn spots, and I think he'll often send horses. Always Dreaming is one that comes to mind that he sent to Tampa. And then the race at Keeneland was an excellent race where he just was not on the right part of the track and didn't have things his way. Last out, really good field on Derby Day over the off track. I'm going to kind of put a line through it. If he's that far out of it again, he will not win this race. But I'm hoping Johnny V can get him into the race more, and that might be the ticket to seeing his best.
You mentioned Valentinian, a $1.5 million purchase. Part of that he's buy into mischief. The other part is he's a grandson of Rachel Alexandra. So he's got the pedigree to develop into something pretty good. He's only had the 3 career starts. Same with Garamond. He's only had the 3. So these are a couple of horses in this race with some ceiling and could be second half of the year 3-year-olds that we're talking about trying to get ready for the Haskell and Pennsylvania Derby, and races like that would make a lot of sense for these kind. We talked about Garamond off the clip. Let's go back and take a look at his race running in that 3-horse field when he was able to deny the big favorite Cornucopian. We'll watch that replay now and talk a little bit more about the Pegasus.
This top duo as they're approaching a quarter mile left to go, and Garamond is a stubborn foe to get by. Cornucopian now gets the encouragement here from Ortiz, and here comes Cornucopian, but Garamond is still there. Garamond is shrugging off the challenge of Cornucopian right now, and Garamond has a final furlong to get. Cornucopian's got to go and got to pick up this rival. Garamond is down at the rail. Cornucopian has a clear second. Garamond is getting away late, and Garamond will win it. Garamond wins it over Cornucopian, who will hold on over Mime.
So we'll see. It'll be a bigger challenge than taking on 2, that's for sure. Just the Fair Shakes one I'm a little interested in here, Scott. This is a horse who had a terrible post in Federico Tessio. Mile and an 8 that Laurel starts right on top of the turn there, going into the clubhouse turn. Still ran a good second that day to Pay Billy. Pretty decent competition. And then in the Sir Barton, no match for Crudo, but look how they spread eagled the rest of the field. 3.5 to third, another 3 3/4 back to fourth. He was clearly second best in there. And you got local connections going against Todd, going against Chad, all the big names in this race. I like that situation when you know you're going to get a fair price in that respect. I think Just a Fair Shake's got a fair shake in this. Certainly one to watch for the exacta. He doesn't have much early speed in here, and like you mentioned, this race doesn't look like it's going to blaze. He can't get too far back, but I think you're going to get the right price on Just a Fair Shake.
I had that horse last out in the Sir Barton. I thought he ran a very big race and just kind of ran into a buzzsaw who took advantage of the situation. He would be the other one. I actually think he's probably more likely to run his race than Valentinian. I think Valentinian has more upside at this point, but a very cool horse for, like you said, low-profile connections. You love to see it.
Let's go to race number 10. Next up at Monmouth, this is the Salvador Mile, grade 3 company here. Salvador Mile, named for a horse. We're getting up there in age, Scott, but I promise you neither one of us ever cashed a ticket on Salvador. He was the 1889 and 1890 Horse of the Year. So going back in distance, he ran in the Monmouth Cup back in the early days of Monmouth Park. Nobody wanted to run against him. He was so good, he won it in a walkover. So that's the history of Salvador. The Salvador Mile was a prep towards the Islin, which will come up on Haskell Day. Pretty nice field in here, including Bishop's Bay, going to be a solid favorite for Brad Cox. Bishop's Bay is a horse who went essentially wire to wire last out in the Westchester. He's got an outside draw with a short run to the first turn going a mile here. Flavian Pratt aboard. Let's take a look at Bishop's Bay, and you can tell me whether we're going to fade or back this favorite.
But still has about 3.5 to make up. They reach the top of the stretch, and Bishop's Bay and Quince Brew, these two sprint on, and Bishop's Bay is a nose in front. Quince Brew with every chance, and they've been shoulder to shoulder almost the entire way. Yo Daddy's picking up rivals from the back, but the front two, and a little match race here in the Westchester. To the inside is Bishop's Bay. To the outside there is Quince Brew. Bishop's Bay finding a touch more. Quince Brew back to second. Bishop's Bay wins it. Bishop's Bay over Quince Brew. Then came that photo. Yo Daddy and Bank.
So the question is, game victory or uninspiring victory?
We're tossing this horse.
All right.
I know this horse very well. I was down at Fairgrounds for that debut, Risen Star Day. And when there's a Brad Cox horse that they think is going to be the next big thing, you get people that work in the industry like myself, we get the word, multiple times. Who was second to this horse was First Mission. They actually ran pretty well. But they thought this horse all along was going to be one of the stars. And he really is underwhelmed. I mean, he has been hammered at the windows in every start. He's never been less than 9 to 5. So he's never really gotten a really strong test here. And that win last out, he should have won easier, I thought. I know it was over and off track. Pratt and Cox with the 6 for 9 record, this horse is going to automatically be a major underlay. I know it, I'm going to hope the pace is hot. I'm going to hope probably more importantly that the Monmouth main track is playing fairly. I think if it is, we have a chance to spring an upset here with number 6 Vitality. Owner Stronic Stables makes it even more inspiring. But the second off the layoff son of Street Boss was really good last out against much lesser. There's questions to answer here, but he held his own at Churchill in a second level allowance event there. Those are serious races. I mean, maybe not the caliber of Bishop's Bay, but I think they are, to be completely honest. So I think this horse has held his own against the competition and hopefully gets overlooked with Frankie Pennington aboard instead of Flavian Pratt.
He won the Prince of Wales at Fort Erie, final leg of the Canadian Triple Crown in his first start on dirt. So now they've decided, hey, we've got a dirt horse here after the synthetics and the turf that he was running on in Canada prior at Woodbine. The chance to get him on the dirt kind of changed the trajectory of his career, and now he's got a chance here to win a graded stakes race stateside on the dirt. Vitality won with a big chance in here for trainer Joe Orsino. I also thought Awesome Rudo was an interesting runner in here. I think this horse is set for a really interesting form cycle. 2 sprints in a route. I know Jeff Siegel's not on the podcast, and that's Jeff's angle, 2 sprints to the route. But coming off the layoff, third off the layoff, 2 sprints to a route. I think this is a really interesting form cycle, and I'll piggyback my buddy Jeff Siegel, who would like this horse for trainer Dan Ward off that form cycle. So I give Awesome Rudo a shot there under Isaac Castillo, jockey-trainer combo that does really well, 22% at Monmouth over time. So Awesome Rudo, one who could be in there. Vitality, Bishop's Bay, obviously in the mix. Some combination of 6, 8, and 9, I think probably the way to attack there in the Salvatore Mile. That's race number 10. All right, let's leave the shores. We're away from Delaware. We're away from Monmouth. Let's head out to the Midwest. Churchill Downs, our next location here on the podcast this week as we go to the Chorleywood Stakes. Again, heavy rain expected on Friday in Louisville, some rain on Saturday as well. Turf course should certainly have some give to it, over 1.5 miles. This is a rematch of the Louisville Handicap from earlier in the meet. Of course, the Chorleywood Stakes, named for the retirement farm in Prospect, Kentucky, that takes retired racehorses. So the Chorleywood Stakes, 1 3/8 miles, 11 furlongs on the turf. Scott, if it comes up soft, does that impact how you handicap the race or the horse that you like? Who are you going for in this?
It's not going to. And, the irony of this is we had technical difficulties last week, but I was ready to talk about the same horse in a different race last week. And that's number 8, Highway Robber, who already ran over this course with Give in it in the Turf Classic on May 3rd, which was Kentucky Derby Day, of course. And if you remember, that race, or that was a day where almost everybody agreed that being down on the inside was detrimental to your chances. A lot of the winners had outside trips, particularly when they came into the lane. This horse was down on the inside throughout. Declan Cannon, a rider that's very conscious in saving ground, he was going to do so with this horse from the 3-hole. And he did so, and normally it would be a good trip. I thought this horse ran extremely well, considering it was a Grade 1 field, Grade 1 United States Grade 1, long distance turf race. So we put it in quotes, but it's the best we got here. And I thought this horse made a very good account of himself. This is his home back in Kentucky. He's run over this unique course at times at Churchill 3 times. He's not going to be 15-1, but I like Highway Robber.
Horse who ran second in this race, Mercante, has already come back to win, so it could be a key race looking at the Turf Classic. It certainly was a classic finish, 6 of them across the track late.
The top of the stretch. Here's Mercante coming off the turn, grabbing the lead. Higante back to second. Redistricting is there. Integration is bottled up. Highway Robber up the inside. Cameo Performance taking Candy. Spirit of St. Louis down the center. 6 across the track. And Gold Phoenix comes through toward the rail. And running B on the outside. In a wild finish, Spirit of St. Louis won it.
Don't you just hate that? You get like a wild melee finish and the favorite finds a way to win anyway.
American Derby and that race, they kill me every year. It's either the chalk that I need runs terrible or vice versa. I thought it was wide open this year.
Let's talk about Utah Beach a minute here. He's already kind of running the gamut of marathon turf races in Kentucky. He won the Elkhorn at Keeneland. Then he came back after that victory at 11-1. And at 3-1, won the Louisville Handicap at Churchill Downs. So he's going for the triple crown of turf marathoners in Kentucky. And so Utah Beach, can he make it 3 in a row for Nacho Correas and Vince Chaminade?
I think he absolutely can. He's the horse to beat. And if you're not familiar with Vincent Chaminade, don't let that talk you off this horse. Not an overly aggressive rider, not a great dirt rider, but I would fully trust him on a horse like this. You see that Nacho Correas has with this one, and he has with some other of his high quality kind of imports at times. You know, this horse used to struggle to win races. You wouldn't know it now, and I think that's a big difference. He's always, made a strong account of himself. 10 finishes in the top 15. He's hard to knock. I just prefer the price I'm going to get.
Outside runner here's got a tough post because this mile and 3/8 starts really close to the far turn. So being out in the 10 hole, there's a chance to go lose his ground right off the bat. But runner up in this race last year, and I thought it was a poorly timed move, moving too soon last time in the 1.5 mile Louisville handicap. Jockey change to Luis Saez can only be considered a positive in Kentucky. So the 10 one in here, I think you want to keep an eye on in here. Segoy, I think that horse has a decent shot in the Chorleywood, but that outside post is a tough one. Thankfully, you've got Saez in the saddle, though, because he's going to have to make some decisions early in there.
Yeah, he'll be hustling out of the gate, you would have to assume. This is a horse with speed, and that is what is dangerous in this race. If you look around, the best horses in here outside of Segoy are certainly not speed types. So if he can get to the lead, he might be tough to catch. But, like you said, tough post out there. And maybe Machado just being off has to do with him being in Delaware, right? No,
right.
I mean, it does, but it's still an upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. Let's go to our final stakes to handicap this week on the card at Santa Anita. They'll run the Daytona Stakes, Grade 3, down the hill, 6.5 furlongs. Daytona's not a horse. There's not a big history there. They used to run this race on the same day as the Daytona 500. That's why it was the Daytona Stakes. So it's not January, February in the Santa Anita Winter Spring meet now. It's on closing weekend of the Hollywood meet. Of course, Santa Anita will wrap things up on Sunday with the traditional, what do they run? Not the San Luis Rey, but the
San Juan Capistrano?
San Juan Capistrano will be the closing day, distance feature. But the sprinters will be in the spotlight on Saturday. Mandatory payouts on Sunday at Santa Anita, of course, with everything must go at the end of the meet. Then they'll go to Los Alamitos for a couple weeks in Southern California before the start of Del Mar. So the Daytona Stakes, race number 10, will be the final sprint feature of the meeting. You've got Motorius in here, a horse who hasn't run since December, kicked off the meet and kicked off the racing year at Santa Anita, winning the Joe Hernandez. Would like to finish it with the win as well, but we haven't seen him at any time in between. Let's go back and take a look at Motorius winning the Joe Hernandez back on opening week.
Unconquerable Keen and Irideo moving through along the inside. They pass the quarter pole and turn for home. Code Duello still there, a length and a half. Central Dispatch set down in second. Here's Sumter running a big race and Motorius. Motorius and Sumter, these two come for the wire together. Sumter got the jump on Motorius, and he's almost a length in front. Motorius trying to get him on the money. Sumter or Motorius. Here's the line. Motorius got up to win the Joe Hernandez.
Now, I can't knock Motorius for running at the beginning of the meet and the end of the meet when there were two horses in this race who have past performances from 2022 still showing in their running lines. So there are some lightly raced veterans in here that just show up every once in a while, and they're pretty good when they do. Of course, we're talking horses like Goliad and Bran. Bran won this race to Daytona in 2022. He's going to try to win it 3 years apart for trainer John Sadler. Goliad is another one who's got 2022 running lines on his PPs. He's run 22 times as an 8-year-old now. So he's making his second start of the year. I know you've got a little feel in here for Goliad.
I do, and I think it's one thing that maybe points to the fact that there are horses willing to kind of come off longer layups and run well in this race. It's kind of the easiest trip from what I've understood from trainers. Kurt Hoover, who's very, veteran of the area over there, always talked about how it's the easiest trip on horses, off the layoff. It's down the hill. They don't really have to run as much as, much, 5 furlong turf sprint, much different, much harder on a horse. So maybe to your point there. And I'm going to hope Goliad's second off the layoff, though, can do this. The real angle I have here, other than that this horse has been fast, is I'm surprised that Richard Mandela ran this horse in the Grade 1 Shoemaker Mile off that layoff. He didn't do that the year before. The year before he came into the race off of several races relatively recently. And Mandela's a very cautious trainer. That was a pretty good field. So I'm taking it as a positive that this horse is still at his best. And I think if he's at his best, he's going to be tough to likely catch in here. I don't know if his speed will be a little bit dull coming out of the 2-turn race, but I mean, that's his best chance. And you would think Mike Smith, who likes to send just about everything he's on these days, would be more than happy to do so.
Goliad going from a route to sprint, as is Stay Hot, who's coming off a long layoff. I'm going to give that one a shot in here at a price. One of my favorite handicapping angles, laying off, turning back in distance, bullet workouts in the morning. The LTB, as I write it down on my past performances. This horse has never run particularly blazingly fast, but might be sitting on the best race of his career. He's going to have to win this. But the one time he did turf sprint down the hill, he won the Baffle Stakes against straight 3-year-olds. He's never taken on older horses in stakes company. Therefore, you must demand some price in here. But working exceptionally well. Peter Urton, Juan Hernandez, good jockey trainer here, obviously. They don't have huge percentages teaming up with each other, but each on their own better than when they have been in tandem over a length of time. But certainly, I think Stay Hot's a horse who could be a decent price in here, higher than the 6-1. I hope to get a bigger price than that. But similar in form to Goliad in that you're looking at basically a miler, a longer distance horse, trying to cut back and trip. Goliad has a lot more speed. This horse is going to need the race to collapse, but I'm hoping Stay Hot has just 1/4 mile burst in him based on those bullet workouts, and it's enough to get him there. But I need 10-1. He's 6-1 in the morning line, and I want more than that. If I can get 10-1, I get interested. Anything less than 10-1, for me, he's a pass. But he's one I have a little bit of interest in, Scott, at a number.
I think it makes a lot of sense. To me, a horse that lately has struggled to win, but the cutback would certainly benefit. And I mean, there's few things that work better overall. Your angle as one, but just purely cutbacks going down the hill, another angle that works tremendously. You don't want sprinters, 5 and 5.5 furlong sprinters trying to close on down the hill. You want a horse like Stay Hot.
Also this weekend, we're done with our thoroughbred handicapping. I want to remind our harness players, the North America Cup is Saturday night at Woodbine Mohawk. Al Samagli has got you covered, our harness handicapper. He's got video up already previewing the entire 10-horse field. For one of the top older horse races, 3-year-olds and up in the harness game, the North America Cup coming up Saturday from Woodbine Mohawk. They're also going to have a mandatory payout in their Super High 5 that same night on the card of the North America Cup. Big money involved there, 6-figure carryover. So keep an eye on the action from Woodbine, and Al will give you more handicapping with a pick 4, pick 5 sequence and a look at that Super High 5 carryover for Woodbine Mohawk. His articles for that will be posted Saturday for Saturday night's race at Woodbine Mohawk. A little bit of programming notes. No show next week. We've got some vacation time, so we're going to take that next week. We'll be back with you down the road on this podcast. Also, that means there'll be no Tuesday podcast this coming weekend. So no, it's official. No first call in the coming week here, but also want to let you know plenty of racing action to go next week that includes Royal Ascot, Tuesday through Saturday, 5 days of great international racing. Carl Spackler, with his new international connections, will be in the first race of the Royal Ascot meeting coming up on Tuesday. So be sure to check all of that out. Scott will be with you with handicapping information on the website all next week as well. And Scott, you've got some handicapping for this weekend to put up on the site blog-wise.
Yeah, I have a Delaware. There's already a Delaware Park late pick 4, which is the last 3 stakes races, and a maiden special weight to close out the card. That's already up on the blog. And by the time you, most of you see this, probably the Monmouth spot plays will be up. That 10 times reward points offer will be speaking towards that. And then we've got the mandatory payout in the Rainbow 6 at Gulfstream Park on Sunday. I'll have an analysis up for that sometime on late Saturday, I think, is when we're expecting that. So, yeah, plenty of action spread out across the land here, not one track like it's been with, Churchill, Pimlico, and Belmont some of the more recent weeks, or Saratoga.
All right, so on behalf of everybody with First Bet and Express Bet, our good friend Jeff Siegel, hope to have him back soon. My partner here, Scott Shapiro. I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you in a week or so.